There are certainly teams or runs of teams that go down as memorable in NFL history for their consistent success, winning championships. You look at the Lombardi Packers of the 60s, the Steel Curtain Pittsburgh Steelers of the 1970s, Bill Walsh's 49ers in the 80s, and then Bill Belichick's Patriots. You've got others mixed in there too, right? But we remember those teams. But we also remember certain teams for getting really close but not getting the job done. You talk about the Minnesota Vikings under Bud Grant in the 60s and 70s. They went to 4 Super Bowls, won not a damn one of them. Same thing for the Marv Levy coach Bills in the early 90s. Like, we remember those teams. And you could talk about any number of different things, but the reality is it's cool that you make it to the Super Bowl that many times, but to not come away with a single win, that's fumbling the bag. No other spin needs to be put on it. And when we look at NFL history, it will remember this current run of the 49ers as one of the great dynasties that never was a real fumble of the bag. I mean, that's what they'll go down as, right? A couple of Super Bowl losses to the Chiefs. In each of them, they had double-digit leads in the game. You know, they were a dropped pick away from making it back to the Super Bowl in the 2021 season. Almost ended the Rams year. Like, there's been a pretty generational bag fumble. Like, let's just call it what it is. Yeah, it's great. Oh, they're better than the Bears. Okay, what the fuck does that mean? You're comparing yourself to Bears football? That doesn't take much, right? But I mean, really, truly, like, this has been a generational bag fumble by the 49ers organization. To sit there and lose 2 Super Bowls in such a short period of time, an NFC Championship game, yeah, bad stuff. Certainly, there's blame to go on Kyle Shanahan, and there's blame to go on the quarterback position and the lack of having a guy that can really be the one to put the team on his back. But all of that to say, we go into 2024, and you're looking at the 49ers, and you're saying, okay, what are they going to be? What's going to happen? You know, the 49ers have lost another Super Bowl to the Chiefs. And beyond question, this was a really disappointing season, one of the big surprise disappointment seasons in the NFL in 2024. The 49ers go from NFC champs, almost Super Bowl champs, to 6-11. That's pretty wild work, no matter how you want to spin it. And you wonder if you're seeing the downturn of a dynasty that never was. What went wrong for them, though, in 2024? I know injuries are cited as a big reason, and they certainly were a contributing factor, right? You pay Javon Hargrave big money, and he gives you 3 games. Same thing with Christian McCaffrey, 4 games. You get 7 games out of Brandon Ayuk. You get 7 games out of Hufanga. You get 10 games out of Trent Williams. Like, those are some really big, notable, highly paid players that you're getting half a season or less out of. Yeah, that's going to have an impact, right? That said, though, this is a team in the 49ers that has a lot of highly paid talent, a lot of so-called big-time stars. And their starting quarterback, Brock Purdy, played 15 games, as did Deebo Samuel, as did George Kittle, as did Juwan Jennings. You had Bosa play 14. Fred Warner, Leonard Floyd played all 17 games. So while the injuries played a factor, to sit there and just solely exclusively blame it on that is chicken shit and excuse making. It is. Because bigger contributors to me include the defense taking a nosedive. 27th in total points allowed. Not good. Like, this was a pretty bad 49ers defense. That's why their defensive coordinator was fired, as he should have been, because this was a pretty shitty performance. Former 3rd-round pick Jake Moody stunk. He barely made 70% of his field goals. And look, when you take a kicker in the 3rd round, you better hope that he's a top 5 at his position type of guy, because if he's not, it looks like clown school shit. And when you take a kicker in 2023 in the 3rd round and you turn around a year later and he's a bottom 5 kicker in the league, that's a pretty bad bag fumble. They were 1-5 in their division. Not a good indication of success, right? They stunk in the trenches, if we're being frank, on both sides of the ball. Offensive line, you might blame that on injuries a little bit, and yet, again, like that's a part. But, this is still a team that had plenty of talent on it, and you're still talking about professionals. You got to find a way to get it done. And then even when you look at Brock Purdy, this is the type of season with some of those injuries around him that you see where he's more of the Dak Prescott tier than he is that elite level tier, right? He's a solid quarterback. He's a great executor within the structure, but he's not an elevator and he's not a multiplier, which is something this 49ers organization really, really, really needs to think long and hard about before they commit $60+ million a year to him against salary cap, devoting like 20% of your cap space each year to a quarterback that's solid but not spectacular and is not an elevator or multiplier is wild fucking work. As I mentioned, a big problem with the 49ers this season was their defense sucked, or at a minimum took a significant step back, right? Nick Sorensen was fired as a defensive coordinator. Robert Saleh was brought back to man his post. And honestly, this has to be considered a really good move. Saleh knows defensive football. He's been the defensive coordinator in San Francisco before. That's what helped get him that head coaching job with the Jets. Of all the moves the 49ers can make in this offseason, they've already made arguably their biggest and their best one. And you would have to assume that he's going to come in and have a real positive impact on this 49ers defense in 2025. What else will have a positive impact maybe is they've got some cap space to play with, over $50 million as it stands right now. Like, that's a good thing, right? You'll probably hear a number of people talk about, oh, the cap went up. That's great, but it went up the same amount for everybody, so it's just inflation at that point. The biggest decision, as I mentioned a moment ago, is what to do with Brock Purdy. And there's only one appropriate answer in my mind, is don't rush to do shit. I would not be in an urgent hurry to sit there and invest such a large portion of my cap space for the next many years into a quarterback that is solid but not elite. I think for them, if they come out of this offseason and they give Brock Purdy a massive contract extension, that is a massive fucking bag fumble and a massive mistake. It just is. But they've probably put themselves in this position and in this spot where they might end up not having any other choice. But if you're going to do that, why don't you go ahead and wait another year? Make him prove it. Make him earn it. There should be no rush to have to do it at this moment. They've also got a number of free agents they got to think about. Hufanga's a free agent. Jordan Mason's a free agent. Aaron Banks is a free agent. Mercifully, probably Devondre Campbell's a free agent and should be gone. God, what the hell was his problem? You got mad because Greenlaw came in, so you just walked off and said, I'm done? Like that? No. It's not even like it's Vontae Davis quits at halftime type of shit. Like, that's kind of epic and legendary and funny. Lord rest his soul. What Campbell did is just punk shit that is not respectable in any way, shape, or form. But when you look at guys like Hufanga, Mason Banks, will they keep all three of them? I don't know. Do they need to keep all three of them? The answer might be yes. And maybe Mason is the priority of the three, especially with Christian McCaffrey's injury problems in 2024 and uncertainty around his long-term prognosis. Another positive for this team is they've got some pretty nice draft pick capital in the first 4 rounds. You've got pick 11, you've got pick 43, and then 2 third-rounders, pick 79 and 99, and then 3 picks in the 4th round, including a couple of compensatory ones. Like, that puts a 49ers team in a position to replenish themselves with some young depth and some young talent for, frankly, a team that needs it. Because one of the good things about the 49ers is when most everybody is healthy, they've got a really star-studded roster. They've got those type of alpha stars and enough of them that can carry you to a championship. However, when some of those alpha dogs, if you will, might be out, although I think a couple of those alpha dogs aren't really alpha dogs and kind of overpaid and overrated, the problem is that the depth behind them just can't pick up the slack. And there's just a lack of overall depth of talent on this 49ers roster. So it really is an important draft for this 49ers team. If they want to actually become a team that can contend for a championship and win one, for God's sakes, then they need to hit it big in the draft. And it's wild, too, with the 49ers because they've had some really notable, like, boom picks in the draft, and then they've had some really notable busts. Just wild how that works out. Same team, same front office. Going into this offseason, though, what are some of their big needs? I think defensive tackle and edge rusher are the two big needs that this team has. Because when the 49ers are at their best, they're able to generate a lot of heat consistently on passing downs with their front four. That was not something this team was able to do as easily or consistently in 2024. So you've got to get better there, even if Javon Hargrave does come back and healthy. And Bosa comes back and has another beast season and plays most of the year. And even if you bring back Leonard Floyd and he's playing all 17 games, you still need more talent on the edge. You need more talent on the inside. You know, when you talk about busts, you know, in recent years, Solomon Thomas was a huge bust. Javon Kinlaw, massive bust, right? Armstead's gone. Buckner's gone. So some of these guys that have been in the middle of that defense, they need a disruptor and a difference maker on the interior of that defensive line. I look at the offensive line and I would say guard certainly is a position of need, especially if a guy like Aaron Banks leaves via free agency. They're in kind of a pickle here with Jake Moody, like in the kicking position. You got to think that you cannot go into next season with a kicker that can only make 70% of his kicks. That has to be a pretty important need. And then in the defensive side of the ball, I think like later on, there needs to be some thought put into investing in some young depth back at corner and back at safety. But a big thing here is this team just getting healthy too, right? Like that certainly doesn't hurt. But if you just think that, hey, all these guys coming back and if they stay healthy, which is always a big if these guys stay relatively healthy in 2025, they're right back in the mix, you might be fooling yourself just a little bit. This is a team, I think, that is better in terms of reputation right now than they are reality. They've got to do a good job in this draft if they want to actually have their reality meet their reputation.